going up. Elevator systems. Bowen family systems theory in brief for a life of learning. Welcome to Elevator Systems and a sneak peek of what we are going to be thinking about in Season 2, which is the 8 concepts of Bowen family systems theory. My name is Dixie Vandersluys. I am a counselor and a member of the faculty at Living Systems Counselling and Training. Katie White is here with me. She is the executive director, an instructor at Living Systems, and also a couple and family therapist. And we thought we would do fun facts today, Katie.
But Dixie, we've made it to a second season. This is a big deal. Thank you for those of you who are sticking around with us. Thank you for those of you who are joining us for the first time. We're happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, and my thought is just, I don't know, I keep going back to some of the episodes, so it's I find it helpful to revisit
at the things I do in the episode.
Yeah. Sometimes I just skip over me also, but yeah, so I thought we would do, we introduced ourselves last season, but I don't know, fun fact, something a little bit different. I would say I am a lifelong learner, which is a nice way of saying a big old nerd. And I've studied formally history and philosophy and religion and theology and psychology, which means, I don't know, jack of all trade, master of none. And Bowen Theory is rooted in biology or biological terms and a lot of science. And what I'm realizing, especially this year with some of my fun research that I'm doing, is that my background of philosophy and history and religion is actually super useful. So that's my nerdy fun fact. And then my other fun fact is I have been playing the drums for 30 years.
That's super cool. That was something new that I use. So I'm waiting for one of the episodes where we encourage you to open with a drum solo, because that just feels like it needs to happen.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the drum solo. I'm a fan of hiding in the background.
I do not play a thing, so I cannot accompany you. So I was thinking when you asked this question about a fun fact, I liked how you opened up. I also am a big nerd, and I was thinking about, I've been a big nerd about families since the time I was very little. I always wanted to be, I'm an oldest sister, and I always wanted to be in the action of what was going on in the system. So when extended family got together, I always wanted to be, at that table. I always think of Hamilton. I want to be in the room where it happens. So thinking about that was something that was always interesting to me. And I was lucky that I was in a family where people let me often be a fly on the wall or a kid in the seat in the corner watching the system. But I thought of my fun fact is that I've had the privilege of living in 3 countries, and it's really helped me learn about the world and how people are both similar and different all over the place. So it's been a really interesting, I always think it's a privilege that I've been able to have that experience. So that's my fun fact that I bring here today. And I can tell you, even in English, there are many different words for different things.
Fair enough. Yeah. When we were talking about a second season, I had some ideas, and you really strongly suggested that we focus on the 8 concepts. So I'm curious your thinking on what is important to focus on that.
Yeah. I think when I've done some looking into how intentional Dr. Bowen and those he worked with were on developing and observing these ideas and getting really clear on the concepts associated with the theory. If we're going to do a podcast on Bowen family systems theory, I just think it's responsible to really go through those concepts in the way that he did and think through, the intentionality behind why the word, he chose what he chose and how that relates to larger natural sciences. So I think that was one thing that I thought was really important. But I'm going to kick this one back to you because you had an order that you picked to do our season concepts in. And I want you to say a little bit more about how that order came to be.
Right. Well, I had a different order. And then in our faculty monthly meetings, we're going through Dr. Bowen's chalk talks. And I remember you highlighting that like there was like a specific intentionality in the way he laid those out. So I'll probably throw it back to you and ask what you know about that order. But we're going to do it in that order. The only difference is that we're doing differentiation as the last one, because we're doing like three episodes this time. Differentiation.
So differentiation, as we keep coming back to the cornerstone concept, you know, and I actually don't know the answer to that. So I'm gonna do some research into how the order of those came to be. But I just think it's useful to, if people do want to learn more about this, those tapes are there. They're free. They're on the, you know, the Bowen Center for the Study of the Family's website, and you can dive into them and hear what is the foundation of this theory. And I hope, you know, those of you that are listening that are interested in studying a theory and are new to it, take on the challenge of where do you go with this theory, right? That's where it started. That's where his original thinking was, or maybe as he developed his thinking, but where do you take that challenge? I get interested in that.
Yeah. So I thought I would read out the 8 concepts, and I was going to say this after, but maybe I'll say it before, that there are some large words in here, but I don't want people to be intimidated, because this is all stuff that was observed in daily human life. And so despite the fact that there's some 5-syllable words coming up here, the whole purpose of the podcast is to make these really, really clear for people. Okay, the 8 concepts in the order we're presenting are triangles, nuclear family emotional process, family projection process, multi-generational transmission process, sibling position, emotional cutoff, societal emotional process. And then, as I said, we have 3 episodes on differentiation of self. We're going to look at solid self and pseudo self, work in one's own family, and what coaching in Bowen Theory looks like. So yeah, do you have anything to add, Katie?
I think I said a little bit. I appreciate that some of these are really big words and concepts. And you know, maybe that's one of the challenges that someone new to the theory takes on, is would you have a better way of saying this that still captures the idea in the theory? I think that's a nice challenge. You know, I've been thinking a little bit about language and the importance of it based on a presentation I just watched, and getting interested in that. Is there a better, more concise way to say some of these things instead of, you know, 10
multi-generational?
Exactly. Yeah. So I said, maybe I would say, you know, I really did hear Dr. Bowen in his letters just before he died, putting out this challenge of what are you going to do with this theory? So I hope that would be one thing somebody thinks about. What are they going to do with these ideas, and where they're going to take them?
Yeah. Well, I thought we would run the episode kind of like we did last season, of a pitch, an example, etc. So yeah, Katie, what is your elevator pitch on the 8 concepts of Bowen Theory?
Oh man, this was a hard one for me. So when something's hard for me, I go back to the dictionary. Well, and today, you know, everyone's dictionary, well, mine at least, is Google. So I went to the Google dictionary, I think, which pulls from the Oxford Dictionary, and I was interested in what is the definition of a concept. Yeah. So concept was an abstract idea or general notion. And then I went into a theory, and a theory definition is a system of ideas intended to explain something. And I thought, there's my pitch. You know, the 8 concepts are ideas to explain something. In Bowen Theory, we're looking at explaining the predictable way that natural systems function. And I think, although I look to other systems to also think about these ideas, what I'm thinking about here really, and what I'll probably talk most about, is the human system. And so that's my pitch. And adding one caveat, because again, this is my issue, is really making sure to note that one of the things about Bowen Theory and these 8 concepts is that they're interconnected. So in theory, you can't look at one in isolation. It's too simplistic. Right. and I think this is my pitch and also my kind of way to put in an example as well, is one idea in systems is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I just think that speaks to how these 8 concepts are interconnected. And if you just look at one, you miss things. So that's where I'm going to leave my pitch.
Yeah. Mine was, and I haven't read this for a few days, so anyways, it is what it is. Bowen's 8 concepts are a framework for understanding how humans operate, especially in groups. I think of each of them like a piece of the human functioning puzzle. Each offers a way of observing and thinking about how people function in relationships. And when you put them all together, you may get close to a scientific understanding of the human, as well as seeing how all of the pieces are so connected and that they each contain ideas from the other.
There you go.
Yeah. Fun fact, third fun fact of the day. In Family Therapy and Clinical Practice by Dr. Bowen, the word concept is found on 256 pages. And I know this because I searched it. And of course, it is multiple times on each page, which I also know because then I had to click through as I was like, what would Dr. Bowen's pitch be? And so I think the word is probably used about 1,200 times, maybe 1,500. So I was a little tired of clicking through by the end.
But I think that's it. These are ideas to explain things. And I really think that's what Bowen was trying to do. So I feel like that's useful to me in connecting back to his efforts in developing this theory.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting in the introduction to the book, he said, I have tried to be scientifically accurate in the use of terms like hypothesis, concept, and theory, and that there is like a misuse in sort of common language that I have a theory, which means I have an idea or I have a hunch about something. And that's not what he's doing. He's really working on making this a science. So yeah, in terms of what maybe Dr. Bowen's pitch would be, I had so many options. Let me just grab this one. The theory is made up of a number of interlocking concepts. These concepts describe some overall characteristic of human relationships, the functioning within the nuclear family, the way emotional problems are transmitted to the next generation, and the transmission patterns over multiple generations. And then other concepts talk about the extended family or the way family patterns are linked with social systems.
And, you know, I think that fact about Bowen started with 6, right? There was not, all of them weren't there at first when he introduced this theory. And as he began to work and explore, he added more concepts. And I think when he died, I think that was a challenge to get interested in would other folks who take on the theory get interested in adding other concepts. And as of yet, I mean, I know there's some talk about a 9th concept quite a bit, but at this point, you know, nothing has been formally added to the group. So what is your example?
Well, I have one more thing to say, actually. Don't rush me.
It's always me that I think has more to put in.
Because I've put significant time and effort into another ChatGPT definition. But this time I realized that my phone has the ability to convert a picture of text to text, so I didn't actually have to type it out by hand.
Ooh. Which meant technology as your friend.
Yes. But what that meant is that when I went to say summarize Bowen the 8 concepts in 2 sentences based on this information, that I actually maxed out the capacity. So anyways,
you were too wordy.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I looked at Catherine Rakow, Robert Noon, Anne McKnight, Jack Butler, Daniel Papero, Roberta Gilbert, and 3 books by Michael Kerr. And this is what ChatGPT said. In Bowen Theory, a concept is a structured, scientifically based observation that describes specific emotional patterns and relational dynamics within a family system. These concepts serve as the foundational elements of a broader theory that integrates family systems thinking with principles from evolutionary biology to explain human behavior. The 8 concepts, interrelated and grounded in Bowen's observations, provide a comprehensive framework for understanding family dynamics and human behavior, both within the family unit and in a broader societal context.
Man, I was feeling like a mic drop was needed there. Mic drop. That was the.
And it took about 2 seconds for that to show up, which always amazes me.
So there you go. How long does it take a human? Quite a long time. How long does it take ChatGPT to summarize a large body of literature? 2 seconds.
Yeah, 2 seconds. Yeah. As long as it's accurate, which we have to always confirm. My example, and we can just sort of fly through these things, but my daughter laughed at me because I was watching Encanto with the subtitles on and pausing about every 10 seconds to take like diligent notes about everything that I saw. But Encanto literally has a family tree and a description of the role of every family member in the first 5 minutes. And so I think it is a great movie to watch to think about how do families function. There's even a song about emotional cutoff. We don't talk about Bruno, right? and then to think about, as a moviegoer, observer, we see the whole picture and we see, oh man, Abuela is missing that, or why don't they see this, right? And it just highlights, I think, for me, what we miss in our own families often, and also what is the main character going to do with herself in the middle of these challenges, which is an example that Amy Post used in our differentiation episode, which I thought was so good. So yeah, what's your example, Katie?
So my example is less of an example and more of a kind of description of, that's a great example. And I think I'll take it and say, I think the example I wanted to think about is interlocking, that word interlocking. And I liked your description of how the viewer has a greater picture of what's going on than the participant in the movie, right? To be able to see how, looking at just Marielle without looking at her relationship to her parents and her grandparents and the grandmother's relationship to her husband that's passed, I think just gets it just zones in, I think, which is a disadvantage. So my point was that, we need to look at these interlocking things, that the mechanisms as one concept will look different on different levels of differentiation, or how emotional cutoff is you need to understand it through the lens of multi-generational transmission process. So just thinking about how these things are interconnected. And I'm going to move into what's useful for me. Because I think that is what's useful, is the larger picture. I think it's why systems thinking is useful, because it really allows us to look beyond the narrow view that I can speak for myself, that when I get anxious, I start taking that narrow view. I start looking really, really limited at something that's happening in my life or in my client's life if I get anxious, versus the usefulness to widening that lens and seeing a larger picture and looking multi-generationally about the way things are interconnected. I can't say enough how often when someone looks at their multi-generational system and will say, oh my goodness, my mother was up against this and my grandmother was up against this, and here I am up against the same challenge. It doesn't make the challenge go away.
Right.
But I just think, I'm going to draw on another, like the togetherness piece of that is how it can calm the system down to know other people have made it through this.
Right.
This challenge that I'm up against. So I think, to me, the usefulness in these 8 concepts is I always have a place to look at something different. And to me, that's really been useful.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, it's similar. I was just going to highlight that when I get anxious, I very quickly go to why and to blame. And I literally, when I begin to just think about the aspects of the concepts that are at play, like it feels different in my brain and my body. I don't know, maybe that sounds strange, but
Yeah.
it actually
Something different
shifts
to your
me.
physiology.
Yeah, it shifts me to a different place. It doesn't make the problem go away, but it like gets me less wound up,
Yeah.
um in a sense. And then well, one of my sort of life mottos is I hate this. Now what am I going to do with me? Um and I think that the concepts are sort of a can be a path out of the why and the blame to what am I going to do
Yeah,
in the
I'm
face
going
of
to
this.
appreciate that. And some of the things that I know, even in the last symposium that I went to at the Bowen Center, where, the neuroscience is telling us that the brain is really geared to do cause and effect thinking because the brain wants things to be simple. When, especially when we're worried or anxious or in tension, the brain wants things to be simple. But the brain is complex, and the usefulness of pushing beyond that cause and effect thinking to open the complexity. I've been on this
Right.
planet 4 to 7 years, and I've learned that humans are not simple. I mean, we're complex
Right.
beings. And I think the concepts to me help push back against that brain a little bit that wants to just make that quick assessment, which
Yeah.
again, I'm not saying that's not a bad function of the brain. I think that's, that helps us survive all the time. But if we have some time to think about what we're up against, I think challenging that quick cause and effect gives us more to work with.
Right. The example comes to my mind of we currently have a Canada Post strike in our country for I don't know how many weeks it's been going on, but if you
I hear
ever
that. I mean,
needed
for those of you that wouldn't know, we're filming this
right,
on December 6th, so this is stressful.
very stressful. And if you ever needed to know just how interconnected everything is, if it was $50 suddenly to mail something the other day, and their businesses
Yeah.
are closing
Yeah.
because anyways, and just all the pathways that it's affecting. So
Yeah.
life is not simple, and so it serves us well to
How
attempt to.
interconnected these structures and systems are, again, that works in a family system as well. How interconnected, when one person is up against a challenge, it does show up in all the other systems, all the other branches of the system. So that's a great example, and I will hope good things for Canada Post.
Yes, and that's all.
Yes.
My takeaway is maybe people want to go watch Encanto, and what do you notice? And I'd be really interested. What do you notice now versus maybe if you go back, if you watch it when we're done the season, and you have some of these concepts to think through. And then in the show notes, I'm going to put in Living Systems as well as the Bowen Center. We both have places that just give brief descriptions of the concepts, and then we can put the chalk talks from Dr. Bowen up as well. So what about you?
So my takeaway that I was going to encourage people to do this season, and especially over the holidays, if you celebrate or if you're connecting with family or friends, is to observe. I think the first step always in taking on a project for yourself to be interested to is to observe. So I'm going to be doing that this holiday season as I interact with people that I don't interact with every day and see what comes up. And so that's my challenge, is just to be an observer, be that fly on the wall that I like to be. We'll take from Hamilton, be in the room where it happens, and just be interested in what are the moves that people are making. What are the moves you're making? How is it showing up in your stomach or your head, or is everybody sick?
Yeah.
So that's my challenge, just to get people interested in beginning to observe themselves.
Yeah. Good. Well, that is our preview, our introduction to the 8 concepts. Like you say, Katie, they have helped me to, I would say, observe better and be a little bit more patient or less surprised by humans being humans. So yeah, the episodes will be releasing in January, and I hope people join us for another ride on the elevator.
Yeah, and please tell us what you're thinking. I mean, I think that's another way we can stay connected and be interested in what thinking this is generating for people.
Yeah, great. We'll see you in January. This podcast is produced by Living Systems, a nonprofit organization in Vancouver offering counselling and training programs in Bowen family systems theory across Canada.